Well, it's unfortunate. Before I could finish editing my masterpiece work of relaying my feelings of the Assassin's Creed vigilante that destroyed the United Health CEO, it seems like your man's got caught. Seems like he ended up fumbling the bag and essentially did everything right, did the touchdown, and when he went for the 1-point conversion on the field kick, just went shy to the left. It seems like, supposedly, allegedly, that this individual was caught in Pennsylvania, of all places. Not only was he caught in Pennsylvania, but he was caught by a McDonald's worker who was told by a customer that the person looked weird and suspicious and seemed to be the individual that was plastered all over the media. A real prison break moment where they're reading the newspaper, looked up and said, hey, isn't that the guy? Manager calls the police come, and now this is where things get a little bit touch and go, right? You don't have much to go off of. You got the fact that the guy pretty much looks like the individual from New York. He kind of seems like he fits the description, but it ain't exactly one-to-one. It ends up being that 5 days later, right? This was on December 4th. Now we're going on December 9th. Your boy was at McDonald's with a backpack. And what was in the backpack? Oh, what do you know? It is the weapon that committed the crime. It is a mask that was involved in the crime. It is a hoodie that was involved in the crime. And he's also carrying around a manifesto like the guy from Seven, saying how much he hates the healthcare system, the CEOs of the system, and that he basically had a big old arrest me sign on the top of his head once he was stopped for questioning. On top of this, he also had the same fake ID he used in New York that he had on his person in Pennsylvania. So it seems like this person either is a master genius that wanted to get caught, or this is one of those simple scenarios where he did everything quote unquote right up until the end. And of course, as you must hear from your local government, your local news agency, the news station, whoever is talking to you, this man did a wrong thing. He did something to an innocent bystander, and he is not a hero. He is not to be regarded as a hero. Yet it seems like this is the death of a hero. It seems like people were really rooting for this guy. People are now saying that the McDonald's employees should be fired and locked away for ousting this poor guy just because he wanted to stop and get a McRib before going on with his other vigilante activities. And it seems like people are really down and out that this guy actually got stopped, and it seems like this is the individual. And some people were actually hoping that bro would go on a streak, like he would go around just getting all these bad CEOs. I don't know if you know this, but CEOs are like roaches. You could get rid of one, but there's a lot of other ones. And to be fair, I mean, I don't know anything about the United Health CEO. He's basically being shown as an individual who is heartless and terrible. I'm sure he did some good things like pay taxes and contribute to his local government when it comes to elections, so that's very important. So I think for me personally, most people don't look at the CEO as a person as much as he's just a figurehead for an already very hated group of people, that being corporate greed as well as healthcare, where, you know, the idea is to make as much money as possible and not pay out actual patient claims. And it's very interesting to see this because I think this is one of the few times where the elites of the world basically didn't have a chance to do a spin job. A lot of times things happen where, you know, it could be a terrorist attack, it could be something where a CEO is assassinated, where it basically captures the nation attention and it captures the nation's emotions, and it's very raw and very honest and very truthful. And it's one of those things where, you know, if this was now, it's going to be picked apart. Now they're going to look at the guy and say he's either a liberal nutcase or a conservative regard, and that, you know, you shouldn't really go along with this guy because he also hated the CEO of Wendy's and wanted him dead for making such delicious chicken. So I think that him as a figurehead, as a vigilante assassin, was a lot more successful when he had no name and when he had no face. And I think that this is actually a wake-up call to a lot of people that, you know, the proletariat, the individuals that are the lemmings of society, they do have some power. And obviously this is probably the worst way to do that, where, you know, technically every citizen could vote, and technically every citizen, if they were that disgusted with the healthcare system, it would change. Whether people want to acknowledge that or not, it is a Republican democratic system. Of course, you vote people in and then they start talking about how much money they need to send to Israel as opposed to your healthcare, but it doesn't change the fact that it is a four-party system by the people, and that, you know, if there was more people that voted that way, it would be resolved the same way that after 9/11, the Patriot Act was put in place and most people supported it. So I think that this is a failure on a lot of sides, but when it comes to feelings, people are generally happy because I think that most people, the individuals that realize healthcare is a sham, didn't really care about the guy, and the fact that he went away and the fact that it sent such a powerful message was a positive. And I think you also have to be giving a moment of silence to the police that really were scratching their heads, not trying to figure out, where is this guy? Where'd he go? They basically put out a 10K bounty at first saying, hey, can you catch this guy for us? Because we don't really want to do the work and we don't really know where the guy is. And then now they're being blessed by some old fart at McDonald's who has an eye of a hawk and was able to recognize those eyebrows from the CCTV footage. And it's actually pretty interesting to say that now, after all of this, the past week, it seems like what this would-be assassin or actual assassin's goal was to hurt the United Health shares, the stock of the company. And ironically enough, and this is fairly ironic, he assassinated the CEO on the day of the investor conference, and I'm assuming it was to send a message to the investors that he wasn't happy with the CEO and the CEO was bad and he's a terrible person, etc., hoping to dampen the stock. And ironically enough, the shareholders didn't care. They were like, all right, employee number one was replaced, put employee number two into place. But now, a week later, now that there's been so much talk about this and how trash healthcare is and how much scrutiny there is, shareholders, aka scumbags that co-sign this behavior, are moving out of United Healthcare, and it's going down a bit because they fear that the people might wake up and realize, oh wait, we're more than those people. Us ants have more numbers and we could do something to the grasshoppers. I don't know if something will come out of this, but it's actually pretty funny to think that they could care less about the CEO getting offed. They themselves could care less, and that it's more so the fear of the public's reaction to this. And I think in all of this, one thing to take into consideration as well is that it really is a great example of how so many people can feel the same way, but not really vocalize it, because for a long time, even with healthcare, people have different opinions in terms of it being a paid system by your employer versus a system given by the government. And basically the argument gets pushed around and pushed aside, and it gets to the point where Republicans are fighting Democrats over the most minute details as opposed to actually addressing the problem. But when you're not allowed to do a spin job, when you don't have a politician out there spinning that globe and trying to distract people from the facts, a lot of people feel the same way, and most people don't support the current systems in place, and that's probably true for more things than that. And it really is interesting to see how the internet and things of that nature, when allowing you to vocalize your feelings as opposed to putting it through a filter and thinking about how it looks best for others, actually kind of shows that most people feel the same way, and that all this garb and all this facade of feeling a certain way about certain things just based off of your political ideology is really BS. And I think that moving forward, more and more people, at least online, when they're honest, they'll usually get to the same destination. The problem is, of course, that when it comes to the internet, when it comes to TV, when it comes to politicians' positioning, that's not very good. That's not very great. Imagine a world where Democrats and Republicans couldn't string you along and say that we'll have healthcare for all and we'll balance the budget and we'll do this and we'll do that. If there's no problems for them to solve, then they serve no purpose. So they look at it as an easy opportunity to give you a bunch of no nonsense, who cares BS that they will fight for, such as identity politics, and saying that they do support certain identity politics and don't support others, where in reality, what are they doing? They're not really doing anything. If a politician stands up and holds a rainbow flag over their head or burns the flag, what does that really mean? Are they actually doing anything? Will they actually push forward an amendment or legislation, or are they just saying things to say things? Usually it's the latter as opposed to the former. And I think that people should pay attention and realize that, they have the voting power, they have the actual individual status to do something. And if push comes to shove, just go ahead and 3D print a firearm from your printer, and it seems to solve a lot of problems. I mean, this is a very big blow to people who say violence does not solve your problem, or violence is not the answer, because man, that really is a problem solver. That really did push the agenda and really make a difference. It's almost like that one shot in Austria that started a whole world war. It really is seeming like this was a signal to most people that you should wake up and not take the BS that you've been fed. But who knows what this will actually lead to. Obviously, this guy was a terrible person, and I would never condone the actions. And as an individual who licks and bootlicks the corporations, I think that he should be made an example of. But I really am interested to see how this plays out and how people continue to feel, because you can have a spark and it could lead to an explosion, or it could just be a dud. More than likely, this is going to be a moment for people to kind of push out their grievances and from there get lukewarm concessions, such as the other healthcare company, Aetna or Athena from their Blue Cross, basically reversing their idea to put a time limit on anesthesiology, because one day they were scratching their heads wondering how can we make more money by giving less service, and they thought that they would actually put a time limit on anesthesia. And ironically enough, after the CEO of the other company ended up getting off, they reversed this decision, but I'm sure that was completely unrelated. Either way, this is an easy case to solve considering the evidence was on the person. But I wonder how this will go down in the next week, 2 weeks, in terms of the spin job that's going to be done, where you as an individual who supports this guy now have to look at him in a different light. He has a name, he has a backstory, he has a history. What if it ends up that he's just some crazy guy and hated this guy and there was no real political agenda? Will you feel a different way? Will you look at him differently? Will he die a hero here today? Or will he continue on to be just another kook job that the media says is crazy and you shouldn't listen to? I'm not really sure, but now the assassin is behind bars, and now it's the media's job to gaslight you into thinking what you thought was actually wrong, and the way that you feel is not appropriate.
At the end of every single video, make sure you ask people to rate and subscribe to your content. It makes them feel like they're involved even though they're really not. And most importantly, make sure they comment on every single video. If you have to, disguise it. You know, call it something like the question of the day. And really make them think you're gonna really read it when you really don't have to. Ha ha ha!